In 1 week, it's going to be illegal to have an abortion in the state of New York. This was in 1974. I was in the basement, basically, of this hospital in a supply room, which is where all the girls went who were having abortions. And it was just the most traumatic thing I had ever experienced. The screaming, the crying. There were about 10 of us in this room, and it was dark and cold, and it lasted for 2 days. It took 2 days for that whole procedure to be completed. After that experience, I go back to school and I just didn't know how to cope. I didn't know how to deal with life. And so drugs and alcohol were where I turned because that made me feel better. But I do believe that God uses everything in our life for his purposes. And that's where we can use our pain and give it purpose. And when we can use that pain to help others, I just think that's part of the meaning of why we're here. We're here to help one another.
100%. Hey, guys, it is Allison. I am the host of your show, Allison Answers Mission Awake. I cannot wait to sit down with you today and go over how we are going to crush the mediocrity in your life that has been plaguing our society since the beginning of time. I cannot wait to have a real deal conversation that includes intelligence, fun, excitement, and real actionable steps to make a real difference in the life that you're living now and making it into something you can be damn proud of and excited to live. Sit down, put on your damn seatbelt, and get ready for the ride of your life. Hey, guys, how are you today? I have an incredibly interesting guest coming on. I am hopeful that you will sit and listen throughout the story because very often this is a controversial issue that we are going to be talking about. I am today having a guest that is the CEO of Soundview Pregnancy Center, which is a place that helps women be able to not have an abortion and experience the support necessary in order to make that choice, in order to choose life if they are willing to do that. And what I'd like you to do, I know that people have different feelings about this, but if you hear this incredible woman's story and you hear how she overcame her situation of being in a late stage pregnancy and having a horrifying abortion, and what she decided to do with her pain from that experience as a very young girl, and be able to help other women in similar circumstances, I think you will understand fully how this is a beautiful work that she's doing. So I ask that, regardless of your opinion, that you would stay through till the end and trust that I bring people on of value and people who really make a difference on earth. And whether it's something you have strong feelings about or not, there's no secret that I'm a woman of faith, but I'm also a person who understands basically every struggle that anyone could have. So there's no judgment here. I just ask that you stay with us and hear this beautiful woman out. I have Doreen Jansson coming on next. And I'm so looking forward to you meeting her. And without any further ado, and also, would you please like, subscribe, and send this podcast, especially on YouTube, because running counseling centers and being so busy in my other work, I do not make any money on this podcast. And really the only thing I ask in return is that you would share it and help me to get my word out to people who will actually be changed by it and who it will benefit. I'm not looking for it to be scattered all over the world to people who don't really care about this work. But I do ask that with the value that I share, that you would share with others and also like and subscribe on my YouTube channel, because I don't really go on my YouTube channel and do a lot of work on it to create like an algorithm that would make it blow up. But if you could give me a hand, I'd so appreciate it. Thank you so much. And here is Doreen Jansson. Hey, guys, how are you today? It is Allison from Allison Answers and Lager Counseling Services, as you all know. And I just told you about this wonderful guest that I'm having on. And now I have even more of wonderful news for you. So the bottom line is this. I found out after speaking to Doreen that her story, her backstory is very, very similar to mine in many, many ways. And her mission is very similar to all of your mission about not wanting to be a victim and overcoming the victim mentality and taking tragedy and turning it into triumph. And that's what this story is going to be about. As I mentioned, there's some controversial things that are in our society today, but I'm asking you to kind of be a wise observer and go beyond what your belief system is and just hear how Doreen talks about really having more of a choice in what she's about to share. So we're going to talk about addictions. I want you to understand, we're going to talk about overcoming addictions. We're going to be talking about overcoming the tragedy of being a widow. We're also going to talk about overcoming the tragedy in her childhood of having a very late term abortion. And we're going to talk about the unbelievable experience, which you all know, that I was hospitalized for an eating disorder for 28 days when I was in my 20s. And it is one of the worst and most painful and shameful experiences. And this beautiful woman is also going to talk about how she's overcome that and probably many other things that are in her secret box that we don't know about yet. So I want to welcome you, Doreen. I want to thank you so much for being here. And what I would like to ask you to do is to just give us the backstory about each of these experiences. If you could tell us, even begin with your young life and how you ended up in that terrible situation with having an abortion. Would you mind sharing that?
Sure. So the backstory is that, like many of us, we grew up in homes that were, dysfunctional in themselves. Parents were divorcing early on in my childhood. At the age of like 12, found out that my parents were getting a divorce. My father was an alcoholic, and my mother had enough. And so one day I get this bang on my bedroom door, and my mother's just flipping out. And she said, "Your father and I are getting a divorce." And I just felt like in that moment, I had three younger siblings that, we were all going to be split apart. And it was very traumatic because I didn't know, like my world had just fallen out from under me and didn't really know what to do with that. And so at the age of 12 and 13, I was very unsettled. At the age of 13 and 14, my mom had started dating my father's friend, and I knew about it, and I was the only one who knew about it. And so, I had this, I was really torn between whether or not to tell my father. And it was such a big, huge mess. And so I didn't really know who to talk to. I couldn't go to a guidance counselor. My mother was on the PTA, and, my 14-year-old friends weren't really going to know how to help me. So I had a friend who told me that she had her brother's friend was an older guy. He was like 21 years old at the time. And she said, whenever I've had any problems, he's been pretty good about giving me advice. So do you want to go speak to him? I said, yeah, I really need somebody to just tell me what to do. So she brought me to his house, and I should have known just taking one look at him that he was not exactly the, pastoral counselor type, And so I had started experimenting with, smoking pot during that time, and he invited me up to his room, and he said, "Well, let's go. I just want you to relax, And so he gave me a joint, and so I smoked it, and I think there was something in it because I had smoked pot before, and I never felt like that. I think it was treated with something because I actually passed out, and when I woke up, he was on top of me, and I really wasn't sure what was happening, and then I knew what was happening. I kind of came to, and I just remember him saying, "Well, I hope that was helpful." And then he said, "You can get dressed now." And he said, "And by the way, if you tell anybody what happened, I'll deny it." And that was it. And I left. I had my little bicycle that I got on and rode my bicycle home, and found out after several weeks that I was pregnant. And I knew I was pregnant. I didn't take a pregnancy test, but I just knew I wasn't getting my period. I started getting sick. And because of the condition of my home life, there was absolutely no way I could speak to my mom about it. I couldn't talk to anybody about it. So I just really hid. I didn't know what to do. I was going to school in ninth grade. I was vomiting in the bathroom with morning sickness and just carrying all of this alone. I didn't have anybody to tell. I didn't have anybody to talk to. And so my pregnancy kept progressing. And then one day I got a phone call from I had this other friend, best friend, and she was so worried about me. She told her mom, and her mom called me. She called me at my house on the home phone, back in the day when there were actually phones on the wall. She called my home phone and she said, Doreen, if you don't tell your mother in 15 minutes, I'm calling her back and I'm going to tell her myself. You need to do something about this. So I was actually kind of relieved that this was all going to come out because I had been carrying this literally for almost 6 months. And so I did. I told my mother and she flipped out. She did not really understand how all of that could have happened. Anyway, long story short, she just took me to the doctor the very next morning. And I remember him saying to my mother, you better get her into the hospital right away because in 1 week, it's going to be illegal to have an abortion in the state of New York. And so this was in 1974. And so they admitted me to the hospital and they started to perform a saline abortion, which they're not even legal anymore. And I was in the basement, basically, of this hospital in a supply room, which is where all the girls went who were having abortions. And it was just the most traumatic thing I had ever experienced. The screaming, the crying, it was, there were about 10 of us in this room, and it was dark and cold. And the nurse there was very mean. I asked her for a blanket because it was cold. And she said, well, honey, you got yourself into this. You're just going to have to deal with it. So it was a really traumatic experience. So that lasted for 2 days. It took 2 days for that whole procedure to be completed. It was very, very traumatic. So that was at 14. And so after that experience, I go back to school and nobody ever talked about it again. My mother never talked about it. She apologized that, she wasn't there for me at that time, but it was just sort of swept under the rug. And so I think it was from that time in my life of just feeling like my world had fallen apart with my family. I had this traumatic experience with this rape, now abortion, and I'm still 14 years old, just trying to figure out life. And I started getting deeper and deeper into drugs and alcohol because I just didn't know how to cope. I didn't have coping skills yet. My parents were not wanting to be in the same house together. It took 4 years for their divorce to finally settle because there was so much fighting in the home. So I was left alone to take care of the house and my younger brothers and sister. And I just didn't know how to cope. I didn't know how to deal with life. And so drugs and alcohol were where I turned because that made me feel better. I just felt better. And music. So that's how my life started.
Can I just say one
yeah.
little thing to you?
Mhm.
Because I just feel like I have to say it. I am so, so sorry that you went through that.
Thank you.
I just feel it so deeply. So thank you for sharing that. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I believe that I think this has been the theme of my life. I believe I'm a woman of faith. I believe in God. I have a relationship with Jesus. And I came to know him personally at the age of 30 after many years of addiction and making a lot of mistakes myself. But I do believe that God uses everything in our life for his purposes. And that's where we can use our pain and give it purpose. And you're doing that with this podcast and with your business, with your counseling business. You're helping others have victory in their lives in the midst of their pain. We're not going to get out of this life without having to deal with loss and with pain and adversity. But it's what we do with that will set us up for a victorious life one that has purpose, one that has meaning. And when we can use that pain to help others to maybe avoid some of those pitfalls that we fell into, I just think that's part of the meaning of why we're here. We're here to help one another.
100%. And, so I also want you to be able to share about your addiction and overcoming that, and your eating disorder. I would call it, in body image difficulty.
Oh, yeah.
But would you mind sharing how, because I'm going to take you all the way forward and then all the way back. So I think it's just the whole mission that so many of us are on, that you took this tragedy and you created this avenue for these other young girls. So I want to just ask you to share about Soundview, and then we'll go back to the addiction, or we could do it either way, whatever you think is the best path. But I definitely want to get to what you're doing, and then also the other things.
Yeah, and I think it all works together. So I'll talk about Soundview. So about 25 years ago, I came to learn about this ministry on Long Island by the name of the Care Center. And the Care Center, it was a ministry.
Wait, can I interrupt you? Can you tell me how you got from being that girl? Is this it? Is this what you're telling us? How you got there to being the CEO of Soundview?
Yes.
Right? Is that what you're telling us right now? I'm interrupting. I told you I was going to interrupt you.
That's okay. Yes.
I want to make sure.
Well, it goes back to what I was just saying before, is how when we use our pain and we give it purpose. I came to know about this organization that helped young girls and not, maybe teens or college age girls who are pregnant and they don't know what to do. They're afraid. They're afraid they're going to get kicked out of their house. Their boyfriends are going to leave them, whatever. They want to finish school. There's a mountain of reasons why when a girl gets pregnant, she may feel that she has no other choice but to terminate that pregnancy. And I just wish that when I was 14 and pregnant and scared, that I had a place to go where somebody could actually sit down and talk to me about it and give me all the information that I needed to make an informed decision. And so when I found out about this ministry, this organization, I wanted to get involved. And so I started volunteering, holding baby clothes, answering the phones, and whatever I could do. I found out that the director of this ministry was going to be retiring. So I applied for the job for the executive director, and I was turned down. They said, well, we know you have a heart for the ministry, Doreen. I was actually speaking on behalf of this ministry. We know you have a heart for this ministry, but there's this other woman. She's, a pastor's wife. I mean, she just fit the role. I had just had a baby, so they didn't feel like I was in the right season of life. And so I said, okay. So 5 years go by. I start my own pregnancy center out on Eastern Long Island. For 2 years, I worked at this. It didn't really get off the ground. Going back to this ministry, the director that got the job left. I thought, okay, now is my time. So now I interviewed again. They turned me down again because a woman was coming up from Florida who'd been running pregnancy centers for 26 years. And I just had such a passion for this ministry. I just said, we need like 10 of these on Long Island because there are so many girls out there. There's so many women out there that if they knew they had options and choices and resources, they would choose to go forward in their pregnancies. So we just need to educate them. We need more of accessibility to these kinds of services. But they hired this other woman. I said, okay, I'm out. This is it. This is obviously not the direction that my life is going. God, I just said, I'm laying this down. I'm going in another direction. And I did. And I started building a business of my own. And I had a part-time job here and there. And that director that they hired became very ill and was unable to continue in the position. And ironically, they came to me and they said, so Doreen, this position is open. Are you interested? And I laughed. I laughed out loud. I said, absolutely not. I can't take the rejection. I let it go. It's fine. I'm not interested. What I didn't know is that 2 weeks later, my husband was going to be diagnosed with cancer. And within 10 weeks, my husband was gone. He never had a good day. I was a mom of a 14-year-old and an 18-year-old at the time. And so that whole tragedy, just my world was spinning upside down. Meanwhile, this organization is still looking for a director, an executive director, but they thought, all right, we can't talk to her now because she's going through the death of her husband. But about a month later, they came back to me and said, Doreen, we understand that you have every reason to not consider this position. But if you would just allow us to bring you before the board and have this conversation. During that time, I went away with some friends to a concert. It was a Chris Tomlin concert. And in that concert, Louis Giglio, I don't know if you know him, Pastor Louis Giglio, was speaking, and he was talking about creation. And I'm standing in this arena, and there were like these 10-story screens all around the arena of the universe and the planets and the stars and the moon. And Louis Giglio said, and God esteems you above all of this creation because he created you in his image. And it was in that moment that arena just absolutely went silent. And I just heard the voice of God in my head. I don't hear audible voices, but I just really felt God say, Doreen, what else are you going to do with your life that's going to have more value to me than to help to save my most precious creation? These are my children. And it was in that moment that I surrendered and I said, okay, God, but I was so broken. I was grieving. I didn't know what my life was going to look like in the next 5 minutes, let alone 5 years. But I just completely surrendered and I said, okay, God, I'm so in over my head with this. You know what you're getting, and I'm just willing. I'm available. And so I stepped into this role just a couple of months after my husband passed away. And I have to tell you, it was the greatest gift because I was able to speak life into women and families while I was grieving. I was able to speak life into others, and it helped me. It helped me in a way. And so, as I look back, I think that was such a gift to me to put me in this position during that season, because God knew that this was so important in my life for so many years. I had a passion for it. But I also had learned some leadership skills over the years of running my own business and working in different capacities that I felt like I was finally seeing how all the pieces were starting to come together, and I was meant to be here, but not 15 years before. I was meant to be here now. And since I've stepped into this role, I'm now here a little more than 13 years. We've gone from being this little mom and pop shop pregnancy center that gave out used baby clothes to now we have 3 medical centers across Long Island where we have an OBGYN physician, we have nurse sonographers, we have social workers, we have a whole team. We have 20 employees and tens of, I would say about 50 or 60 volunteers. The organization has just exploded. And we have an awesome reputation here on Long Island for just being a very reputable organization that is professional. We treat women with dignity and respect, and that is the number one core value as far as I'm concerned, because I was in that position and I remember how I was treated. We treat every woman with dignity and respect when they walk in the door. They don't need to be shamed or judged. They're already in a tough spot. They're already suffering and afraid and scared. And we want to be those people where we can offer true help and hope and compassion to these women who are in this crisis. Yeah. So that's our mission, is to, now, the things that I dealt with in my life, drug addiction, abuse, emotional abuse, physical, all of those things, these women are walking in with all of that. And so I believe that it sets a tone here for us to be that safe haven for these women who are coming through the door. So I believe that all of my background has put me in this position where I can, with authenticity, and I can stand up in front of a group of people. And even those who say, well, what about in the case of rape or incest? Well, I was raped and I was sexually abused by a family member. But I can say to this day that I still wish that even in that case, that I would have been given an opportunity to go to maybe a maternity home and have that baby and place that baby for adoption, because now the victimization of being raped and having this abort, now there's two victims, me and that child, right? And there's two trauma incidents that have to be dealt with, that I wish that there would have been someone, just one voice in my life that would have said, you can do this and I'm going to help you. And so many women say that to me today that have had abortions in their past, that are traumatized by it. Although society would have us believe that it's no big deal, you just take a pill. But it's just not that easy. And women say all the time, I wish I would have known that there was this organization. I wish somebody in my life would have supported me, because I really didn't want to do that, but I just felt like I couldn't do it myself.
Yes.
And that's what we're here to do. Just give women an option.
I'll say, just, having counseling centers and 32 years of counseling people, it's insurmountable the number of women at all different ages who have told all of us their guilt, their ongoing struggle. And it's not just Christian women, it's women of all races, religions, who they feel so badly about their abortions.
Yes.
So whatever is being told out there, that it's not a big deal, or, and this, what I hear you doing is that you're giving people the true choice.
Yeah.
The real choice.
Yes.
Not, so there's this kind of idea that we're, people who believe in life are being told that they don't have a choice. It's not true. It's a myth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just what you just said also, I don't know, I just want to say this because you probably heard this, but your baby at that 22 weeks, that horrific experience that you both shared together, like, I feel like whoever that baby was, that they created something incredible on this earth. Their little mission that happened, their tragedy, I could say, maybe I'm being extreme, but martyred for a cause. Like, it's just incredible.
Wow.
So,
Thank you.
And another thing you said, I just wanted to highlight, is that when you said that during the grieving of your husband, that you were speaking life. I just want any widow, because we have a lot of widows who listen here. I want any widow or anybody who's dealt with a tragedy to highlight and hear that. Because when you can take a dark situation and speak goodness and light and life into it, you're actually transforming what's built in your operating system, what's inside your body. It's
That's
incredible.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. So I want to hear more from you, because I think you're incredible. You're like one of my best guests I've ever had. Seriously.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you.
So in terms of like anyone listening who has addiction, or a family member who has addiction, or also the eating, like, let's do all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it all transpired from, those teen years going into my 20s, really getting deeply into drugs, I guess that was my choice. And then the alcohol kind of came with it, because my drug of choice was cocaine, and the alcohol would, make me settle down a little bit. And it became all consuming in my life. I destroyed my body. I was, up for days. I would see the sun come up, the sun go down, the sun come up, the sun go down. And I was just cocaine all the way, and drinking. And I would be at the doorstep of a liquor store waiting for it to open so that I could get my tequila. I mean, it was such a mess. And then my body would be starving. And so then I would just binge eat for the next day and lay on the couch and sleep and whatnot, just to try to recover. So anyway, I had gained like 80 pounds, 85 pounds. And I just looked at myself one day after years of doing this. I did this to myself until I was like 28, 29 years old. And that's when I was just lying in bed after one of those binges. And I just knew that if I continued on this path, that I was going to kill myself because my body couldn't take it anymore. And so I had a decision to make during that, in that moment. I had this like, that still small voice, that deep place inside of you, that your consciousness. And I just felt like I needed to make a decision right then. Did I want to choose life, literally, or did I want to just continue on and destroy my life? And I just felt like I was made for more than this. I said, Doreen, you were meant for more. And I just made a decision. That was my turning point. And I said, I do want to live. I do want to be healthy. And I had to get up out of bed and just, in those days, we still had phone books. I opened the phone book and I was looking for a 12-step program or something I didn't know where to go or turn. And I did. I started going to the Cocaine Anonymous and got my 90-day pin, and I started on my journey. And I started to deliberately choose. Here's where the decisions come. Habitually, I would call my contact who provided the drugs for me, and I would tell myself, instead of picking up that phone, I'm going to go outside and go for a walk. And so it was the little decisions, one by one, that every time I made a good decision, it was like planting a good seed, right? This is my philosophy of life is all about seeds. You plant the good seeds, you get the good crops. You plant negative seeds or damaging seeds, weeds, this is what you're going to get. And so I started to get off the drugs. And then as far as my health was concerned, I couldn't even find a pair of sweatpants to fit me. I said, I'm going to start exercising. So I literally could not find a pair of sweatpants to fit me, but I dragged something out of a closet that could have worked. I go down to the track around this high school and I think I'm going to just start running. Well, I took about 10 steps. My blood pressure shot up. I almost died. So I'm like, okay, I need to learn how to get into shape. So I started to do some research on health and nutrition and exercise. And over the years, it didn't happen overnight, but I started gradually putting together how, when I'm eating more healthy, I feel better. And I started just reading more, and I became so interested in how the body works and what is nutrition and exercise and so on. And I got to a place where I had lost the 85 pounds, and I was actually working with a trainer, with a personal trainer. She became a really good friend of mine. And I said, I think this is something I'd like to do, because I knew that weight loss or health, whether you need to gain weight or lose, whatever it is, is that healthy weight for you, is an emotional, physical, and sometimes spiritual. Yes. It's a combination of all three. It's not just follow this diet. There's something going on mentally that you need to understand what emotions are causing you to react in a certain way, whether it's to pick up a drink or pick up a drug or pick up a food or whatever it is. And so I wanted to help women who are struggling with that mentality of, that legalistic mindset. Well, I can't eat this, so I'll eat that. And just to understand that we are stewards of our bodies. And that's how I started to really look at myself, is not that I have to love my body just for the sake of loving my body. I have to take care of my body because it's the only one I have. And if I want to be if I want to enjoy my life and be useful in life to other people, and I need to take care of my body. And so it became more about that. Of course, I'm still fanatic about the weight on the scale. I guess that's just wired in me. But I've been working out and exercising now for 30 years, and I'm grateful now, because now I feel good at the age that I am, and I feel strong, and I'm still exercising, and it's just, I can't even look at the pictures of who I was before. I can't believe it's the same person. So it's this transformation that happens, but it's one decision at a time, right? every day you get up to do that workout, or every time you choose to eat something that's better for your body than that piece of cake, it's like you're voting for yourself to
Yeah.
succeed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, guys, how are you? Isn't that amazing? This story that we're hearing on this show is great. I want to just give a shameless plug of my book. I would really want people to have a good look at my book and to understand what it really is. I used to be ashamed to plug my book, and then I realized, how is that right, to keep the information, the 30 years of experience that I have, the 8 years of education, the trauma that I grew out of and learned how to manage, and how to manage emotion, all the training I've had in neuroscience and quantum physics. How can I keep that from the public? So it's not, I used to think it was like something I should, be humble about, but being humble is silly when you're keeping things away from people that they need. So what I want to tell you about my book, and I hope that you do get it, because I think it will really help you. I've gotten a lot of tremendous feedback about my book, and that it's really, really of great value to a lot of people. And what it is, it's an interactive read, and there's inside of it, there's journal entries. So as I'm teaching and going through the book and teaching you how to create the life you want by understanding how you're wired, how your thoughts, feelings, how your words, how thoughts are things, and the neuroscience behind it, and how we are programmed from the time we're 0 to 7 years old to live a life of mediocrity, or a life of poor design, because of meaning that we attached to events when we were children that just became our programming. What I want to tell you is that there is a way out, and it's a simple way. It's very simple. I believe in the simplicity and the grace in healing, and that it doesn't have to be a big work. So I would love it if you'd get my book. It's a best-selling book on Amazon, and it's my first. And I encourage you to get it. It's called The Wake Up Call, an interactive read for building the life you want. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Thanks so much for being on the show, and let's get back to it. I'll tell you, I love everything you're saying. And one of the chapters in my book is about decision. And it's like a decision is it's a power move.
Yeah.
And I love hearing that, because I really believe that those small little incremental changes are the power.
Yeah.
The other thing also, like, I can hear every situation, every tragedy you've been in, you've taken it, you've used those ingredients to create something triumphant. My education, your education, true education, came from every tragic experience that we took those ingredients and transformed them. We're relentless and unwilling to allow them to take us down, and created such a high level of victory that we could go into any land of pain. Like, this is how I visualize it. I see, like, eating disorder. I was also sexually abused. I also had addictions, like, all these different things, and then go into that land. And I picture it. I always see this land, this dark place that people in, and I'm like, yeah, I could go in there. I go in there with I actually see like a cross figure. I put my stake in the ground. I'm like, I'll just sit here with you. I understand this land.
Yes.
And I love you right here in it. And your shame doesn't exist anymore.
That's right.
And like, I just love that God uses people. And that's why anybody who's listening, if you have an addiction, I don't care where you're at. I don't care how many mistakes you made yesterday, today, even 5 minutes ago. The truth is that every one of those things, and even if you feel like, I remember my stepmom said to me once, I just love this woman. She said, Allison, there's always a solution. We may not have found it yet, but there is a solution. And I have lived my life based on that. And that's what, if you know that, whoever's listening, if I'm looking at the microphone to tell people like this, I'm like, listen to me, people. I'm like, if you are listening and I don't care what you've been through, if you had an abortion, whatever, it's like, we are two women of faith, Christian women. And so much of the way we've been showcased as people is people who judge, people who are like, we're gonna turn our back on you. We'd want you to be perfect. Don't listen to devil music. We're just not those women. I don't know. You're not that woman. But
No.
we've been there, and that's why we have authority to tell you that you're beautiful. You're good enough. That all this stuff that you've done isn't you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this stuff that we end up doing because we don't know what else to do. I have to ask you another thing because something that stood out to me about something you said that wasn't showcased. That you're an ACOA. You know what that is? An adult child of an alcoholic.
Right.
And I'm bringing that up because this is something we see everywhere, and people don't realize that they're that.
Mm-hmm.
An adult child of an alcoholic has all these specific characteristics, like people pleasing, overly responsive. I also noticed you have younger siblings. You were left as the oldest of all these babies with this tremendous feeling, probably, I imagine, of responsibility. Did you feel that?
Absolutely. I was cooking and putting the babies to bed and cleaning the house at 13, 14 years old because my parents couldn't stand to be in the same house together. So there was a tremendous amount of responsibility. My friends were going out and doing teenage things, and I was, really left at home. And actually, I was made fun of by my guidance counselor because I complained about it. And my mother and he called me Cinderella.
Yes.
They would laugh at me and call me Cinderella. But, and I have to say, some of these things that I'm sharing about my mom, I just feel like I have to say it. My mom has completely come to faith in Christ and recognized all of the things and has asked my forgiveness, and she's not this person anymore. And I just want to say that even she has turned her life around. She's in her 80s now, and she's got some health concerns right now. But I think I need to talk about forgiveness also.
Sure.
Because there's so much of our lives that, there's damage that has been done by others.
Yes.
And if we carry around bitterness and unforgiveness in our hearts, it poisons us. And so that was huge for me to release my mom and my dad for failing me as parents in some ways, not in all ways, but in some ways that were very crucial to a young girl growing up. And I've had to undo a lot of that programming in my brain. As you're saying, there are certain characteristics of growing up in this sort of an environment. But I think what you're saying and what I'm saying is that we don't have to stay there, right? We can recognize that these are characteristics or these are thought patterns, but we have an amazing brain that can be totally rewired and reprogrammed. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that too, in that when we start to pay attention to what are we thinking about, what are those conversations with that self-talk that we hear in our brains that is just normal to us, it's normal noise in our brains, to me anyway. I became more intentional about paying attention to what I'm thinking about. And when I would hear that you're fat, you're ugly, or you're not smart enough, and to this day, I still struggle with those feelings of comparing myself to others, and others are smarter and better. And it's noise in my head. I literally think of it as a tape recorder, that this is a tape that just keeps spinning in my head. And I visualize hitting pause or stop, rewind, and then I replace that lie with truth. Okay. Now, for me, it's what God says about me. For me, it's what does the scripture say that who I am in Christ. And for me, maybe it's just something affirming of myself, something maybe that I appreciate about myself. And this isn't in a conceited or, this is only for the sake of telling myself truth instead of believing the lies, because we have a choice even in that. Are you going to continue to believe the garbage that has been given to you over all of these years, or are you going to choose to love yourself and to affirm who you are and the strengths that you have? Because when your brain is really just a computer, and it will receive whatever you feed it. So if you're feeding on the positive things of life and life-giving statements and people and surrounding yourself with those things, you're going to be changed. You're going to be healed and you're going to thrive. But the mind is so powerful, so powerful.
Oh, you are singing my song, woman. So just, I'm just going to, of course, add my neuroscience stuff on here because I
You
love it so
do.
much. But, from 0 to 7 years old, everybody hears me say this. I say it a lot because I just don't want anybody to forget it. We're in a theta brainwave and it's a hypnotic state. And basically the data that goes in there and throughout our life, it's not just 0 to 7, but it's built upon those foundational periods that are so necessary. It's so necessary that we have a programmable body and mind so we can survive, but then it's peppered in with all of our interpretation of our environment at this young age. But what you're saying that is really so powerful is that we do have the power. What I want to say about something you said, so we're in a theta brainwave, a hypnotic state throughout all of those years. Then that part of our brain that's a filter, the reticular activating system, filters out anything that doesn't agree with the lies that we have believed during that period of time. So then it keeps building in this kind of operating system. But the thing that's fascinating, you've probably heard this, but I'm going to say it just in case anyone else hasn't, that out of the 90,000 thoughts, and there's all different amounts that people say, but let's just say 90,000 thoughts we have a day. Of those 90,000, 91% of them are the same thoughts we thought yesterday. And they run on a loop, just like what you just said. They are repetitive. And what ends up happening is that we end up following those thoughts and believing them. They're just electrical impulses that are on a loop. So they're actually biologically not even, they're just memorized words that are, electrically communicating. And then we have a smaller part, about 9%, who knows what the percentage is, of our thoughts that we can utilize to be co-creators. Think into nothing that we've ever thought before. People are hesitant to do that because they don't want to, we don't have a tendency to want to think about something we haven't already thought of. That is seen as not, if it hasn't been seen yet, it doesn't exist. So we want to think things that we couldn't even possibly imagine, because that's how we co-create with actually the creator of the universe.
Right.
So we're actually made to create.
Yes.
When we buy the lie and we just believe the lie of the words. It doesn't even, it's just data.
Yeah.
And those words going over and over again. So I hear words. When I hear somebody say, I struggle with that thought, this is what I do. I have thoughts since I'm probably 3 years old. And I had a very traumatic childhood. So now, and I can hear it sometimes, every now and then. The sentence is, oh God, I don't want to feel this way. And that's the sentence. It's the same one. And now when I hear it, immediately my body wants to then couple with it an emotion. And what I do is I go, oh, and I catch it. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. That's actually not even true. And I look around to my environment. Nothing's happening. Everything that happened already happened. That data doesn't actually go away. And I don't want people to get discouraged about that. But when you build enough thoughts that build all these connections, these synaptic connections in our brain, and when you do it enough, and it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be every thought, but when you do it, these thoughts that are just like running like an old engine, they become obsolete and they don't pop up as much except when you're under stressful situations. So it's very helpful to know every time you build in, like you're talking about decisions, every time you build into a decision, you say, and you just actively think a thought, even if it feels so foreign to you.
Yeah.
That's a good sign.
Yeah.
That means you're creating something that hasn't been created.
Right.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me see the top. So woman,
yes.
I would like to know, tell us about the services that you provide in Soundview. Like what can people, first of all, anybody who's listening who values what Doreen's doing and what she's about to tell you, give her money. I'm just going to say that. That sounds weird. I'm just direct. And I don't mean her. Believe me.
Yeah.
It's and
Yeah.
and this is not a pitch, but I am doing it because I believe in her in what they're doing. And if you know anyone who is struggling, you know anyone who is pregnant or
Mhm.
whatever, reach out. So would you share the different services that you provide? And
Sure.
yeah.
So we provide ultrasound, which is so critical because typically when girls are pregnant, a lot of times they don't know exactly how far along they are, which makes a
Mhm.
difference. Even if they come in and they're thinking abortion is the decision, they can come here. First of all of our services are free, no cost. We are a nonprofit supported by donors and supporters in our community. So there's no charge to them for that. And they receive the medical services and then they meet with a social worker to unpack some of the real situations and burdens that they're facing that are causing them to think that they may not be able to have a baby right now or go through this pregnancy. And we are able to provide the resources, whether it's housing or if it's information or whatever the resources are. We have connections all over Long Island for just about anything that she might need. So there's that. Also, adoption. We can refer for adoption. Okay, so that's the first part of it. Once she decides to go forward with her pregnancy and still needs that continued ongoing support, we have trained advocates who volunteer their time to come in and meet with them on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis and help them to walk through maybe some of the emotional aspects of their pregnancy that they're maybe going through with their family, with their boyfriends, with their husbands and whatnot. And so we're there to help them and to mentor them and decide, there's some women want to continue to learn about growing in their faith, and it's only by their permission and their decision if that's what they want. We have people here available to do that with them as well. We have a men's section for the men. We want the guys to come in. We want them to see the sonogram. We want them to be a part of this decision. We want them, with the permission of the woman, if she wants him to be involved, then we have people available to serve him as well, because we recognize that this is a mutual decision. And again, society has alienated the male from this conversation, but he very much is the number one influencing decision factor in her heart and mind. So we're here for her emotionally, spiritually, practically speaking. We host baby showers for these girls. We just provide the material resources that they need, thousands of dollars worth of diapers, wipes, clothing, and it's all brand new. We don't give anybody anything used, hand-me-downs. It's all brand new. And we just have such a wonderful family of these girls that come back, even with their kids now. We just had our banquet, our fundraising banquet last week, and it's our 35th year of being here on Long Island doing what we're doing. And there are families now who are still coming and bringing Christmas cookies and Christmas cards to us and still thanking us and sending us pictures of their kids, thanking God that if they hadn't found Soundview, that their child would not be alive today. And they cannot even imagine life without this beautiful child as a part of their family. So it's a wonderful work. It is not political. We do not engage in that political argument because I truly believe that that this is a human interest issue. This is a personal issue that we just want to offer the help and hope that women need. And God willing, they'll find us and be able to get the services they need before they make a decision that they are going to regret. So again, dignity and respect. We do not judge, manipulate, or we want to protect women's mental health and physical health. Our pregnancy centers have really been demonized, I have to say, by the media. Yeah. But if you were to really come here and see what we're doing and talk to our staff, you get a completely different picture. It's a wonderful place to be, and we love the ladies who come through.
Yeah. And suppose someone comes in, I just in case someone has this question, I'm like a little so like let's say they're not a Christian, they don't want faith, and
Sir, yeah, we're here for anybody. It doesn't matter what religion you are, what political party you belong to, what faith you have, what ethnic background you have. We serve women of all race, and it doesn't, it's not a part of, it's not a criteria by any stretch.
Right.
And also, I do want to mention, if a woman who had chosen abortion, and like myself, and actually I had other abortions besides that one. So I'm very, very much familiar with the tragedy of that. And they're struggling with that emotionally. We do provide recovery for that. We have a post-abortive recovery program that women who've actually been through an abortion themselves lead. We do it individually as well as in a group setting. And we have helped so many women receive that healing and that forgiveness that they've needed, and really give the child honor and bring closure to that emotional wound. And so that's been a beautiful part of our work here as well.
I mean, I really can't tell you what a great, incredible thing you're doing. It's so clearly God, and just, I'm really moved by the whole thing. And I would love for you to just tell everyone where they could find you before we close.
All right. Well, for Soundview, I'll just, you can go to friendsofsoundview.org if you want to learn more about us as an organization. You can reach me. My email is Doreen, Doreen, 1117 @optimum.net. You can reach me there.
Okay.
That would be great. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Just so you know, all of that's in the show notes. So it'll all be there and available. And is there anything else you'd like to say to anyone before we close? Is there anything that's important to you?
I think I just want people to know that there is always hope, and that as long as you're alive and walking around on this earth, there is hope for your future, and never to give up, and make one decision one day at a time. And you can thrive in this life, regardless of what you've been through in your past.
Yeah. And no matter where you are right now, do not quit before the miracle happens, because I promise you, in the darkest of days, when you cannot see any light at all, if you just keep left foot, right foot, one decision, doing the next right thing. And I'm not talking about perfect thing or whatever, the rules. I'm talking about just what you feel in your heart is the next good step for yourself. I promise you, there's more life for you. I know it. It doesn't matter how old you are.
That's right.
There's always hope. And you're meant to be here.
That's right.
Like and subscribe on our YouTube. And, for God's sakes, Instagram, Allison Answers, and Logger Counseling Services, give me a follow or something, for God's sakes. I am here every week. Freaking people. I'm just kidding. I'm not really actually kidding. Well, kind of. All right. Is a wrap. Bye-bye. Guys, thank you so much for listening to the show. I just want to say to you that we are all together a part of the Mission Awake, a mission that's going to stop the mediocrity that's plaguing all of us. So if you got something here today, I ask that you would be a part of this mission and you'd share it with whoever you can. Take a screenshot of the show and share it on your Instagram. If you are looking for me, you can find me on social media platform Instagram, Allison Answers, or Logger Counseling Services. And give us a review and subscribe, if you could, to YouTube, Allison Answers. That's where you're going to get a lot of content. I drop stuff every day, goofy stuff, all different kinds of stuff. 5-minute videos that just get you moving in your day. Have a great week. See you next time.